Hello, everyone. Welcome to Hashimoto's Awareness Monthly Meetup. We are here with our special guest and keynote speaker, Dr. Amy Myers. And it's an honor to have you tonight, Dr. Myers, as our last meetup of the year. So welcome again. Here we meet again. And for those of you who do not know who Dr. Amy Myers, let me tell you a little bit more about her and why we love to support her and invite her on our meetup. Dr. Myers is a renowned leader in the functional medicine, and she is the author of the New York Times bestseller, The Autoimmune Solution. Her upcoming second book, The Thyroid Connection, was just released in September 2016 this year. She has helped thousands of people around the world overcome thyroid disorder, autoimmune diseases, and other chronic illnesses through her dietary-based program. She says, conventional medicine failed me, and it is my mission to not have it fail others too. And I can definitely add that it failed me too. And as many of us struggling with autoimmune disorder, it's way too common, unfortunately. So we're so happy to have you here with us, Dr. Myers.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. So tonight we're going to do it a little differently. I'm addressing myself to everybody. And so if you have a question at any time and you want to raise your hand, so you just press *6 and you will be able to ask your question to Dr. Myers, and we'll see how that goes. And we'll create an organic conversation with everyone. So let me start by asking you, Dr. Myers, where does your passion for thyroid dysfunction and autoimmune disease come from? I mean, you have a personal experience with thyroid dysfunction. Can you share that with us?
Absolutely, yeah. So, it comes out of, I think most people in the functional medicine space or the healing and wellness space, a lot of it comes out of their own experiences. And as you already mentioned, my motto is that conventional medicine failed me, and it's my mission to not have it fail you as well. So my second year of medical school, I started with panic attacks and insomnia, and eventually a tremor and severe weight loss. Went to the doctor and basically was just told it was medical school stress, and I was just all in my head, and that I was just a medical school student thinking I had everything I was learning about, and she completely dismissed me. And I knew that wasn't the case. And as many of you all out there probably have known that there was something really wrong with you, only to find out potentially, many doctors later that there was. So I insisted on a full panel of blood work, and she called me back and told me that I had Graves' disease. And, I, of course, tell my story in the autoimmune solution and the thyroid connection, so I won't do the whole thing here, but suffice it to say I ended up on medication to suppress my thyroid function and ended up getting toxic hepatitis and knew no other, route at that point other than to have my thyroid ablated. So, and that was a whole, anybody out there who's experienced Hashimoto's or Graves and, just the whole idea of the roller coaster after that, right, having my thyroid ablated and then having to start supplemental thyroid hormone and getting all that. It was really an awful, awful ride. I eventually found my way to functional medicine after medical school and even residency. And once I did, I realized, wow, that's really getting to the underlying root cause and, helping to solve problems rather than just to medicate them or do drastic things like me having to blow up my thyroid. So I really dove in and eventually opened my own functional medicine clinic, and then, of course, wrote the Autoimmune Solution and the Thyroid Connection.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you for being who you are in the world. We need you, Dr. Amy Myers.
Yeah, I wish I had known me when I was going through what I was going through. I certainly have helped many people reverse their Graves and spare their thyroid, so would have loved to have known me back then.
So do I. Many, many years of struggling. And that's why we're here, So how would you say does conventional medicine and functional medicine differ in their approach to treating thyroid dysfunction?
Well, I think the main difference as a whole is that conventional medicine is only trying to treat symptoms, and functional medicine really looks at the body as a whole and tries to find the root cause. So, for me in conventional medicine, they said they solved my Graves by blowing up my thyroid. But anybody with Hashimoto's or Graves knows it's really not a problem of the thyroid, but a problem of the immune system. So in functional medicine, what I'm looking to do is to figure out why does somebody have that disease and trying to change the immune system around. And I've been very successful. I mean, people who are newly diagnosed, haven't been diagnosed yet, particularly with Graves' disease, if they've been, diagnosed, often we can reverse that. But there are plenty of people, and you and I have had this conversation before, who get diagnosed years and years later. They've, now hearing about functional medicine, and they've had Hashimoto's for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. Me, I don't have a thyroid yet. You may need to be on supplemental thyroid hormone. And that doesn't mean you failed at anything. It just means we got, to that part too late to where there was already enough damage. But it doesn't mean you still can't look to the root cause, because once you have one of these autoimmune diseases, you're 3 times more likely to get another. And so it's really important to figure out how you got in that boat and to address those underlying root causes so that you can prevent something else, and also just to feel better. I mean, when I wrote the autoimmune solution, it really, the title is It's a Solution, and the idea was that the entire solution was in the book, and that you should, try to get off these horrible immunosuppressive drugs and work with your doctor to get off of them, or even not go see your doctor but just follow the program and get off of them. But with the Thyroid Connection, they wanted to call it the Thyroid Solution, and I felt like I can't do that because the whole solution isn't in the book. Anybody with thyroid dysfunction knows you need to get your labs checked. If you're on supplemental thyroid hormone, you need to make sure you're on the right dose and you're the right type. And so this was very much a partnership with your doctor, that you could be on the right type and dose but not be addressing the underlying root cause, and you're not going to feel great. Or you can be addressing all the underlying root causes, but if you need the supplemental thyroid hormone, if you're not on the right dose and the right type, you're not going to feel great. So it's very much, this book is very much a partnership of a how to work with your doctor. Make sure you're getting the right labs. Make sure they're interpreting them correctly. Make sure that you're getting the right diagnosis. And then, of course, if you have Graves, hopefully, trying not to get on that harsh medication or do something drastic like I had to do. There's a solution in the book with that, with different supplements and herbs, and, of course, the dietary-based program and sorting out your root cause.
Yes. What really helped me also is that I needed to understand what was happening in my body, not just somebody that would just give me some medication, here you're going to feel better. It was really important for me to visualize what was happening, to make sense of it, and it took a long time for someone to come along and give me a visual picture of what was going on.
Yes. It is very important to understand, we these days have to advocate for ourselves. Even somebody coming to see me, I think I'm a pretty good advocate for people, but still nobody's going to advocate for you like you. So understanding.
Right. Can you explain to go ahead, Naman.
Oh, we have a question from a caller. I was going to
Yes, let's do it.
Put them through. This is from 303-919-6021. Give me a second. Go ahead.
So my question is, along with Dr. Myers and what you said, I've had Hashimoto's for about 20 years. Now it just seems that I'm on WP thyroid, and my labs get checked periodically. Now I'm seeing that my body's now, all these autoimmune problems are coming up. And I guess questions how to stop my body from the autoimmune issues.
Yeah, so Hashimoto's in and of itself is an autoimmune disorder, and there's scientific literature to support the relationship between Hashimoto's and other autoimmune conditions like diabetes, like celiac, and then once you have one, you're 3 times more likely to get another. You're lucky that yours is Hashimoto's. Many people never know theirs is Hashimoto's, and it's one of the things that I discuss in my book about making sure you get those antibodies tested, because it really does make a difference about whether your thyroid condition is autoimmune or not, because you're really set up for another. And not to sound trite, but follow the program in either the Thyroid Connection or the Autoimmune Solution, and that will help you. I mean, those both programs in each book are designed to reverse and prevent other autoimmune diseases. So I think that there are really 5 factors that contribute to autoimmunity and chronic disease, and that's our diet, leaky gut, toxins, infections, and stress, and really dealing with all 5 of those components, whether you do that sort of one at a time or all together, and, really looking at what are the biggest triggers for you. But diet and leaky gut are really the 2 biggest, changing the diet and fixing your gut. Through the work of Alessio Fasano, we know that having a leaky gut is one of the precursors to having autoimmunity, and so healing that gut is very important.
Wonderful, thank you. Just an announcement to the callers. If you have a question, please press *6, and then I will click on your name once I see it. Thank you.
Dr. Myers, what do you think comes first? I mean, I have a question about Epstein-Barr. There's a lot of conversation lately that says that maybe Epstein-Barr is the cause or the trigger that starts Hashimoto. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, some 95% of the population has Epstein-Barr, and not everybody has thyroid. So that can't be the only cause. I mean, how we think about it in functional medicine is, you have a cup of water, and every day we're getting drops in that cup, and you hope you're getting rid of some of those, and eventually the cup overflows. And so, what are all those drops? Is it bromide and chloride and fluoride? Is it leaky gut? Is it gluten? Is it Epstein-Barr? Is it herpes? Is it cytomegalovirus? Is it stress? Is it Yersinia? I mean, what is it? And, I could have 5 people sitting in front of me with Hashimoto's, and their triggers can be different for all 5 of those people, even though they, quote unquote, have the same disease. So I do think for people that Epstein-Barr plays a role. And there are people who, their life changes right after mono. I do think that these viral illnesses, particularly through molecular mimicry, are really, there's going to be a lot of light shed on them going forward as being triggers for various types of autoimmunity. And so I think it can be an important role for a lot of people, but I don't think it's the only role. And most people I see, there isn't typically one thing. It's usually somebody has high heavy metals, they have a gluten sensitivity, they have yeast overgrowth, they have Epstein-Barr, they have herpes, they are super stressed out, and then they finally get, some other illness, and then boom, their life was never they got mold exposure, and then they're never the same. So it's just, what is your tipping point, and what is that final straw that breaks the camel's back?
Yes, I see. That makes a lot of sense. Could you explain the significance of TSH and free T3 and free T4?
Sure. So TSH is thyroid stimulating hormone. And, a lot of people think that that's looking at, how well your thyroid is functioning. And it's actually looking at the pituitary. It's a measurement of what the pituitary is signaling down to the thyroid to produce more hormone or not. Most people probably know this as well, that reference range is very outdated and way too broad. When they were coming up with the reference range for TSH, they realized after the fact that they had included people with thyroid dysfunction in that reference range. So even the Academy of Endocrinology has really urged that that reference range be more narrow. Free T3 is the most active form of our thyroid hormone. It's what goes into every receptor in our cells. It's what gives us energy, keeps us warm, keeps our hair from falling out, and makes us feel good. Free T4 is the storage form of the thyroid hormone. We make mostly T4, and that gets converted into free T4, and then that gets converted into either free T3 or reverse T3. And reverse T3 is the storage form of our thyroid hormone, and so it slows down our metabolism, and free T3 speeds up our metabolism, and free T4 is the storage form that doesn't act on our metabolism at all.
Okay.
We have a couple of questions.
Yes.
All right. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, I found a functional medicine doctor who's willing to try natural desiccated thyroid, specifically WP. I tried it once last year through an endo. Thought I was going to die because she let me go for 8 weeks before we measure, and way under-medicated because she used the RLC Labs conversion. How would you suggest getting to an NDT and getting the right dosage without feeling like I'm going to fall apart in the meantime?
Yeah, so one is, those conversion charts can be great, but everybody's an individual and how we metabolize stuff. So I always let people know that. And the first thing is also, was your whatever you were on before, we'll just say Synthroid, were you optimized on that? Because if somebody's not optimized on their current medication or supplemental thyroid hormone, and then somebody's converting them to a different form, then they're going to underconvert. If they're, let's just say that your TSH was 3 and your free T3 was 2.3, then you'd want to have upped that dose in your mind at least and then made the conversion. If you were feeling great on your dose and your TSH was 1 and your free T3 was 3.2, and then, she made that conversion, then you're just one of those people who, either over or under metabolizes it. Having communication with your doctor and being able to be in touch with them or their nursing staff and say, hey, I'm feeling terrible. I really need to check this. I know she said 8 weeks, but my hair is falling out and I can't get out of bed and I'm cold. Can we go ahead and check that sooner? So, one, I usually don't. 4 to 8 weeks is usually when I check it. I do use that conversion chart. I use that conversion chart if the person was feeling great on their meds and we just want to try it for some other reason. But if they were low, then I, in my mind, say, okay, what would I do that in Synthroid, and now what is that new dose? And then I always urge people that if they're feeling over-medicated or under-medicated before we're ready to check, please call my nursing staff and we'll be happy to give them a lab slip and go get that checked sooner. So I don't know, if you already weren't on the right dose and so she didn't kind of up it and do that, or if you're just somebody who falls outside the norm, as we all are individuals and that conversion chart is not perfect, or, it just perhaps was a, lack of communication to get those labs checked sooner, letting them know that you didn't feel well. So you always need to communicate that with whomever you're working with and hope that they're open and receptive to, understanding that and getting your labs checked sooner.
That helps. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for your question. We have one more question. Hi, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I was wondering how that infrared sauna can help the thyroid.
Well, I don't know that it's helping your thyroid on a, I always look at things as like a direct correlation and then a secondary. So I don't know a direct effect on the thyroid, i.e. suddenly getting your thyroid to, increase its metabolism or something or production. But when I think about things that affect the thyroid, like mercury overload or, the halides or plastics, an infrared sauna helps you detox. So I more think of it as a secondary benefit that by getting rid of by getting rid of these toxins that are affecting your thyroid and your immune system, that is then going to help your thyroid in that regard. I love my infrared sauna and get in it almost every night. So, there are things that helps with pain. It helps with boosting your metabolism and weight loss, but I use it for detoxification, and that's how I could see it helping your immune system and your thyroid.
Okay, that's sort of what I figured. So how do you use it?
Well, I typically get in it for 30 minutes or so. I kind of created my own little program, which is just, get it up as hot as I can and stay in it for about 30 minutes or so. You need to be careful depending on your level because it does pull toxins out. And, I deal with a lot of people with chronic autoimmunity and they're sick and they can't barely exercise or get out of bed. And so, they need to start very slow, like 5 minutes, and start it at a low temperature. So I don't think that there's any right way necessarily to use it. Depending on what you have, they might have preset one for detox, one for heart health. Mine has various settings. I just created one for myself, and I just, turn it up as high as it goes and get in it for, about 30 minutes is about as long as I can stay. But I would just urge the people out there that are listening, if they're new to this, that you often do need to build up, whether it's a tolerance to the heat or a tolerance to whatever is coming out in your system, and definitely make sure you're staying well hydrated, with electrolyte solution and repleting, nutrients.
Thank you for your advice. I really appreciate it, Dr. Amy.
You're so welcome.
Thank you for your question. There are no additional questions at the moment, but a reminder to folks, if you have a question, please hit star and 6. Go ahead, Fabian.
Thank you, Nanan. So you write in your book that many patients you see have previously told that their thyroids are normal, which was my case for many years. But you find they actually do have thyroid dysfunction. Can you explain how that can be? You said a little bit about it. But,
Yeah, so I give a number of examples in the book of, my patients. So there are a lot of different ways that this can happen. A lot of people get dismissed like I did, and it doesn't even get checked. They're like, oh, that's, not a symptom of thyroid. Or a lot of women in particular, because this can come during a time of hormonal change of, just giving birth postpartum or perimenopause or menopause, and they get brushed off as other symptoms of, of that. But as we mentioned about the TSH, you could certainly fall within normal range, though it may not be optimal range, and be told that your thyroid's normal when really you have a lot of symptoms. And we've just discussed how the reference range needs to be more narrow. I even see people go to, functional medicine doctors, and they get a free T3 checked, and it's in normal range. But again, there's an optimal range, not just a normal range. When I mentioned to the other woman about her free T3 could have been 2.3, depending on the lab, that's actually normal. But 3.2 is more optimal and where I like to see it. So really, that's one of the key places is people get told their labs are normal, and they may fall within the normal reference range, but they may not be optimal. And it's really that optimal level that we want to be looking at.
Yes. Is there any lab that you recommend someone who thinks they may have some thyroid dysfunction to get?
Yes, so I recommend a free TSH, free T3, free T4, and then thyroid antibodies and a reverse T3. Oh, so that's the other way also. You could even have a normal TSH, even optimal TSH, optimal free T4, optimal free T3, and then you check and they have a lot of symptoms and the reverse T3 is really high. So they're just converting more into their brake than they are proportionally to the gas. And those people can have a lot of symptoms. So it's really important. There are even people who have completely optimal levels and they just have thyroid antibodies. Having thyroid antibodies puts you at risk for miscarriage and difficulty getting pregnant. And so just having the thyroid antibodies, I've read studies, just having thyroid antibodies puts you at risk for anxiety and depression. So there are a lot of things by just having the antibodies and not even having any overt, dysfunction of the thyroid, so to speak, yet, but you're still at higher risk for, like I mentioned, the anxiety, depression, infertility, miscarriage.
Yes.
We have a few questions, Fabian.
Yes.
Hi, who's this?
Oh?
Yeah, hi. Who's speaking?
Okay. I was wondering if you can be diagnosed as hypothyroid and then eventually with Hashimoto's go hyperthyroid.
So I don't think that there are any rules. Part of Hashimoto's is that your body is attacking the thyroid gland, and it swells and there's inflammation, and then it destroys the gland. So some people experience during that process of, sort of swelling and inflammation, swinging from hyper to hypo. I see that frequently with patients. To sort of go from Hashimoto's to Graves', the mechanism is different, so that's not typical. Now, some people say, can you have Graves' and then it go to Hashimoto's or Graves' and then your thyroid burns out? I think the bottom line is anything is possible, and I do think in part of the inflammatory process that people can swing from hyper to hypo, yes, or hypo to hyper as well.
Okay. Yeah, because my TSH is at 0.01 at the last test, and of course my antibodies are over the hill. And they do a T4, but they won't do, I can't get my doctor to do a T3 or a free T3.
Yeah, so I partnered with a lab, and I don't get anything out of it. But on my website, there's a list of resources, or I don't know if Bobby minds me mentioning the lab here. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. But I do have a lab that you can go to. Basically, you order them online, and then you can go to any Quest Diagnostics and get your labs done. You have to pay out of pocket, but it's a much reduced rate. And I just felt like I couldn't write a book about thyroid and then people be in your shoes like you are, where you maybe read the book or you hear a podcast and you want to get those tests and then your doctor won't do it for you and then you feel stuck. So,
yeah.
I partnered with a lab. I mean, I say partnered. I mean, I have a lab that will do that for people. And then you can take your labs back to your own doctor, or, I have a health coach you can work with, or you can find a different doctor who would be willing to work with you to, based on those lab results.
Is that for Canadians as well?
I think they're trying to go into Canada, but I don't know that I think it's U.S. only.
Oh, because
But you may just want to check around. I mean, I don't know how healthcare is happening in Canada right now, but here in the United States, so many people are getting so fed up with it. It's so expensive that there are these types of labs popping up all over the place so that people can, go in and pay out of pocket, because people are so frustrated with their doctors that they're willing to do that. So there might be something like that happening. But you're, welcome to go on, if you go on my website, Amy Myers MD, and then go to my books, and then it's the Thyroid Connection, you'll see there's a button you can press that just says resources, and it takes you to another web page, and it has the lab right there. And you can see if they do Canada. I know that they were working to get into Canada because a lot of people in Canada read my books as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you then.
You're welcome.
Thank you. We have a few more questions.
Go ahead, Naman.
Hi, go ahead.
Hi, Dr. Myers. I'm glad that someone else flipped from hypo to hyper, because I also did. Like, from when I could tell you the exact minute it happened, I felt like I lost my mind. Anyway, the question I have, my doctor says I'm normal now, but I don't know how normal 0.76 is. It's low, real low normal, I suppose. But I felt better when I was actually lower, a little bit lower than that. The lowest I was 0.11, and I've also had 2 exposures to mercury. One was a month ago, and it wasn't right away, and I didn't even know there was even mercury in this fluorescent light. It was a 4-foot fluorescent light on my ceiling, and it fell down, and it just exploded. I mean, it was everywhere, all over. I even had shards in my skin. I mean, I wasn't under it, but just cleaning it up, I've definitely exposed. I still have, I think I still have some in my rear end. I don't know how it got there, but anyway, is there a way to detoxify yourself from mercury? Because I also broke off a tooth, and it was a filling. It was one of those amalgam or whatever, and I swallowed it, but I didn't know at the time that I even had this happen until later. And when I felt that there was something missing, I thought my tooth had broken off, but it was the filling, and so I had swallowed it. So this stuff happened within a year of.
Well, I'm sorry to hear all that. So a couple things that I want to say is for everybody out there listening, you need to go with what your body says and how you feel, not what your labs say. So that's, the misconception that everybody's so focused on their lab numbers or what their doctor tells them their labs numbers are.
Right.
You know you better than any lab will ever know you. I function better when my TSH is suppressed as well, and we don't know what is happening with your free T3. I mean, a lot of people, particularly when they're...
do that test, actually.
Okay. Well, so... a lot of people out there are on Synthroid, and their doctors will check their TSH, and it will be, say, 0.5, and we'll just say that that's low, and want to get them or want to reduce their Synthroid dose. But when they don't get a free T3 checked, that person might already not be converting into T3, and then when they back them off on the Synthroid, then it makes it even worse. So you have to look at more than TSH, and you have to look at how you feel rather than what your labs say. To the mercury point, I do discuss this in the book. And detoxing from mercury, there's certainly things that you can do on your own, but if you really have high levels of mercury, it's best to find a functional medicine practitioner to work with and to go through chelation. I mean, things you can do on your own are things like infrared sauna, and, there's certainly, we have some heavy metal detox supplements on my website that are natural with chlorella and cilantro and things like that in it. And, of course, want to make sure you're taking either glutathione or things to support glutathione like milk thistle and alpha-lipoic acid. But, if you really do feel like your health dramatically changed after these exposures, then I would recommend finding a functional medicine doctor that can work with you and actually do testing. And I talk about this in the book, but I use a 6-hour urine challenge test with DMPS and then chelate with DMSA. So you'd want to work with a practitioner that's familiar with, doing heavy metal chelation in order to get that out.
Yeah. I do see a functional practitioner occasionally because I can't afford to go very often, and he has been running some tests, but I haven't really thought to even ask him about the mercury. But he definitely would test that and see how high it is. I would do that for sure.
Yeah. Good luck to you. You're so welcome.
All right, we have 4 more questions.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Hi, go ahead.
Hi. I've been working really hard to reduce my antibodies for the last 2 years. They've come down a lot. They were so high the lab couldn't measure them. Right now they're at about 500. So at this point, do you still play the wait and see game and keep measuring every 6 to 12 months, or would you do some other intervention like try LDN?
Well, first of all, congratulations. I mean, this is difficult because we'd have to get into your full health history to know what you've done. But, I would, if you've addressed all of the underlying causes and you're definitely gluten-free and grain-free and healed your leaky gut and you've looked at heavy metals and looked at underlying infections and you're dealing with your stress, then, yeah, I mean, you certainly can try low-dose naltrexone. or you can I don't just keep waiting and watching. I mean, I've addressed the underlying causes, and as long as we've sort of left no stone unturned, then you can move on to something else, or you can, that's where you work with your doctor, or you don't want to address some of those underlying things and you want to go on to LDN. I mean, there's no harm that I'm aware of with low-dose naltrexone, and, there can be certainly benefit to doing it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Hi, please go ahead.
Hi, Dr. Myers. I'm wondering if, in your experience, other autoimmune blood markers can be elevated if Hashimoto's is the only diagnosis. I'm specifically wondering about an elevated ANA and elevated SED rate.
So, can Hashimoto's cause an ANA to be positive? How high is your ANA?
It's 400 something.
So ANAs, are you in the United States or are you in another country?
U.S.
Okay. So the way that an ANA is resulted is it's 1 to 40, or it's 1 to 80, 1 to 160, 320, 1 to 640. Okay. So 400 is not.
Is not one of the numbers.
No.
It must be the 1 to 3. What did you say? 320.
360. Yeah.
360.
It's called a titer.
Okay.
It's called a titer, and it doubles every time. So the reason that I ask is when you have something that's low, like a 1 to 40, 1 to 80, 1 to 160, sometimes those can be false negatives. They're just, we don't worry too much about those when they're that low. When they get up in the 300s or higher, then it's believed that it potentially is a real positive. And can Hashimoto's cause an ANA to be positive? It can. At 360, I don't know if that's what it is. I mean, it certainly could be something else that's brewing. I think by having a high SED rate, how high was your SED rate?
Well, it was a little elevated. It fluctuates between 20 and 40.
Yeah, so that's just showing that there's some inflammation going on. So I certainly with that would be doing some further investigation of a full autoimmune panel. Cyrex offers one to look at a lot of different tissues. I would, these things can become positive 5 to 10 years before something else really shows up. So, is it possible? Yes, it's possible. But most people with a Hashimoto's positive do not have an ANA positive at 360. So I'm not trying to worry you, but to ease your mind, I would do some further investigation if your doctor hasn't into a larger panel of antibodies, particularly if you're having any other symptoms.
Well, I'm definitely having symptoms that are consistent with Sjogren's, but the specific blood markers for Sjogren's were negative.
Yeah. Yeah, I see people all the time who have, rheumatoid arthritis and their RA factor is negative, Sjogren's, and their antibodies are negative. So I think if you're having symptoms of Sjogren's and a positive ANA, that's probably more related to that than it is to the Hashimoto's.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of how I felt about it, and convincing the doctor is another issue.
Yeah. So, but the main thing is that, treatment for Sjogren's is symptomatic, and so following a program like I have in the Thyroid Connection or the Autoimmune Solution is, the better bet for you irregardless.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your question. We have a couple more callers. Hi, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually figured out the answer. Thank you.
No worries. Hi, go ahead.
Hi, yes, I have many questions, but one that I was looking into right now was, what do you think about colon hydrotherapy for someone with Hashimoto's and possibly SIBO and
so colon hydrotherapy are you meaning like a colonic?
I guess it's a wash. It's a warm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So colonics. So I've never personally done a colonic, but they can be very beneficial to people. It's one of those things. Anything too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. So it certainly can take out toxins. It certainly can take out infections, but it also takes out good things. It's like chelation, right? I mean, chelation takes out the bad stuff, but it also takes out a lot of minerals too. So you just want to make sure that you're not doing it too often. You want to make sure that you're repleting, your good probiotics, you're repleting your nutrients that are getting washed out with all of that. And, just be careful. And if it's something you want to try, give it a try and see how it goes.
So what if you do have like a leaky gut? Couldn't that be dangerous?
Well, again, I've never personally done colonics. I mean, I'm familiar with them. Would not say I'm an expert in them. So I don't know if it's a situation that it's better to do that and help get rid of some of those infections to heal your leaky gut, or if it's better to heal your gut first. That's just a bit out of my realm because I don't do that. I mean, chelation, I can tell you want to heal your gut first before you do chelation, and anybody who tells you otherwise you want to run from. But I can't tell you that with colonics because it's not something I do, and it's not anything I've ever personally done. But I do, of course, have patients who've done it, and I've had patients who've been very helped by it, and I have patients who've been harmed by it, by doing, going in and doing it every day for 2 weeks or something, and then they get super, super sick. So just with any one of these things, you need to be cautious and careful and understand risk and benefits of anything that you do and, see how you feel with it. But do be cautious about somebody who's trying to overprescribe it and make sure you're repleting any of the good things that get lost when you're doing it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there's so many steps and so many different ways to deal with things and so many different approaches and so many different, sometimes I wonder if you just end up hurting yourself more than helping yourself with all the over concern or worry or overwhelmingness of it all.
Well, certainly that can be an issue for people, which is why, I don't know if you've read my book.
Would that be considered a root cause? Well, I have it. I haven't read it yet, but I did get it. It's on my list to do.
Yeah, so, I have, I have a program in there to do, and I try to cover cover things but not get you overwhelmed. So that's where I would start, and if you get full recovery from that, then awesome. Then you didn't need to do colonics. And if you don't, then you explore one thing at a time and see if it works for you or it doesn't work for you. But I would, find a source that you trust and a program that you trust or a doctor you trust and decide that's where you're going to put your faith for this X number of period of time. And if you get well, great, awesome. That was the right thing to do. And if you get halfway well, then you keep doing that and look for other sources. And if you don't get well at all, then you go a different route. But, try not to get hung up in that. I would call that an ancillary thing. It does take a village to get well. And, a lot of people get well just by doing my programs. And some people need to do that plus other things. I go to chiropractors. I go to all kinds of people. Acupuncture, all kinds of stuff that I do to stay well. But, I didn't do all of that overnight. I saw, added one thing in and tried it, and that worked, and I liked it, and I kept going back. I tried another thing, didn't like that, didn't go back. So, but if you start out your journey trying all that stuff, it will be crazy making. So I would pick a source, whether it's my book or somebody else's book, and start there. And then after you've done that, decide if you need to add something else or not.
That was really helpful thought process. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Okay.
Thank you. You have really great questions tonight. A reminder to folks, if you have a question, just hit *6 and I will select you once I see that. Back to you, Fabian, for now.
Okay, Maman. It's so interesting because there's so much information out there, and it's so true. Thank you for your question. And even though there's so much information out there, there's still a lot of us that ask questions about the connection with the gut and the thyroid. And I was wondering if you could just say a few words about that, Dr. Meyer.
Sure. So I kind of look at the gut with the thyroid in a multitude of ways. We mentioned most thyroid dysfunction is autoimmune in nature, and nearly 80% of our immune system is in our gut. So if you have a thyroid dysfunction, you likely have some gut dysfunction and likely have leaky gut through the work of Alessio Fasano. In order to have autoimmunity, you need to have leaky gut. It's one of the precursors. So you definitely want to address your gut in that term. But also, something like 60% of our thyroid hormone gets converted in our gut from the inactive form to the active form. So you really want to make sure that your gut is functioning optimally. We, of course, digest and absorb our nutrients in our gut, and we need certain nutrients that I discuss in the book in order to make our thyroid hormone, convert our thyroid hormone, get our thyroid hormone into our cells and into the receptors. So the gut is, vastly important, and now there's research coming out about links between small bowel bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO, and Hashimoto's. There's certain gut infections, Yersinia, that's, linked with both Graves' and Hashimoto's. Things like H. pylori has been implicated in these. So the gut has, a lot of different impacts, from autoimmunity to thyroid conversion to nutrient absorption to certain infections that have been linked to thyroid health. So it's very important.
Thank you so much for bringing some clarity to this. Is there any top toxins that we should avoid for the thyroid, and how can we avoid them?
The biggest ones that I think of specifically to the thyroid are the halides. So we all know that you need iodine for our thyroid to make our hormone and to, run our thyroid, and that most of our iodine is in our thyroid. And when we're being exposed to the halides, chloride, fluoride, and bromide, which are ubiquitous in our environment these days, whether it's flame retardants in our mattresses and sofas and rugs, to bromides in our baked goods, to chlorides in our water supply, or fluorides in our medication or water supply or toothpaste, we're being bombarded by this stuff. And so that's really one of the biggest ones that I think is the biggest threat to our thyroid. So, water filters are something that I think of. Getting iodine in your diet, whether it's through seaweed or salt. I formulated a multivitamin that goes along with the plan and the thyroid connection, or you can just get it if you want. And I've incorporated some iodine as well as the other nutrients that you need for optimal thyroid function, like selenium and zinc and B vitamins. So, looking at reducing these halides from coming into our system and making sure we're getting enough iodine in our system to counteract it.
Thank you. There's a lot of controversies about iodine and the amount of iodine and the combination with iodine and selenium. Could you say a few words about that and clarify that for us, Dr. Meyer?
Yes. So I think a lot, of course, my book goes into this first and foremost. I have a whole, section in the book about the iodine controversy. I don't know, honestly, that it's super controversial about, do we need iodine? The controversy is about how much iodine we need. There are a lot of advocates, or there are some advocates in the alternative medicine space that advocate high dosages in the 25 to 50 or even 100 milligrams. And what I'm talking about is microgram dosages, 300 micrograms. So we're talking, 1,000-fold lower dose of iodine. And so I think, and this is, again, one of those things I've seen people come into my clinic and swear that these high dosages of iodine saved their thyroid and cured them. And I've seen just as many people come in and swear that's the thing that really set them over the edge and into thyroid dysfunction. So I don't use those high dosages in my clinic. I use these microgram dosages. And I really haven't seen anybody have a bad reaction to these microgram dosages. I mean, we're naturally not as much anymore, but, look at the Japanese society or Asian societies where they're eating a lot of seaweed. They're getting a lot more iodine than we do. And they have a lot lower risk of breast cancer. We have iodine receptors in our breast tissue. They have a lot lower thyroid, incidence of thyroid cancer and thyroid dysfunction. So, what I'm advocating is what we naturally used to be getting in our diets, but are no longer. And then again, it's this double whammy because not only are we not getting it in our diet, we're being exposed to these iodine lookalikes that are displacing it at a much higher rate than we ever have been in the past.
In what form would you recommend taking iodine? You talked about food. Do you say to eat a little bit more fish, or what do you recommend?
Yeah, so again, it's just one of these things, risk-benefit. You have to look at the source of your seafood. Same thing with seaweed, right? I mean, just taking kelp and things like that, you really need to look at the source and,
right.
Is there a clean source of kelp anymore? So unfortunately, I'm not trying to be the pessimist or the Debbie Downer or alarmist, but, we live in a toxic world. And so, a lot of things that used to be safe and wonderful for us to eat, you really have to question these days. So, yes, ideally fish, seafood, and kelp, but you just need to be trying to get the cleanest sources possible of those foods.
Yes, it's very important.
We have a few more questions.
Yes, please.
All right. Hi, go ahead.
Hi, Dr. Amy. This is Debbie from Ohio.
Hi there.
Hi. I've been following you all over the place, your thyroid
Awesome.
connection that you had, and
Great.
different emails I get and everything else. I'm a nurse, and I never even realized that some of the symptoms I was having actually end up being like an autoimmune, leaky gut, or PCOS. Are those quizzes correct? Because they're like quizzes coming from people that have websites.
Okay, so you're asking me.
I can name them off.
So you're asking me, when you go to other people's websites and you take a quiz and get diagnosed with something, are those legitimate?
Well,
I cannot answer.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you told me the people, I wouldn't, I have no idea. I mean, I can tell you that I have some quizzes in my book that to sort of assess your spectrum of, whether you're on the spectrum for autoimmunity or not. And, those are things, again, I don't know these other people's websites. I mean, I'm not trying to knock anybody out there in the field, but there are few people in this field that are practicing physicians or clinicians of some sort. And I do think that unless you're actively working with people and, it's not me just randomly talking to people on the internet or things. I mean, being a physician, I'm able to get laboratory tests on people. So when I come up with stuff, it's backed by the fact that it's not just me talking to somebody. I mean, I've done lab tests on them, standardized lab tests that, you know, so I can tell you with authority that, you know, when I come up with something, it's a culmination of all of that experience. And not a lot of people out there actively are working with people in that capacity. So that's, you know.
Well, I fought with my doctor because I do have an awful lot of symptoms. And I fought and fought.
So you're saying that you feel like you have these conditions and they're not coming up correctly on the quizzes that you're taking, or you're saying that
I've had GERD my whole life. I've had chronic constipation, chronic fatigue.
Well, I'm just confused. You feel like you're getting diagnosed with things you don't have, or you feel like you're not getting diagnosed with things you think you have?
I'm not.
I
don't think I am being. Because I had a lot of the symptoms, although I don't have really bad thyroid levels. But I've had a lot of the symptoms that she's not really a doctor. She's a doctor. She's a pharmacist. Isabella Wentz.
Well, I think that, you know,
mentioned on the Betrayal series, the autoimmune.
I didn't watch her interview. I mean, I didn't watch it, so I don't know. But I think anytime anybody, and I found this in writing my own book, you know, when you're trying to reach as many people as possible and capture many things in a generalization, it's very difficult to do. I mean, I grappled with that in my own books, to go from being a clinician working one-on-one with someone, having the benefit of a 30-page intake form and talking to them for an hour and a half, and then lots and lots of lab tests, to try to extrapolate all that and to be able to help a wide range of people in a 400-page book. You know, it's very difficult. It's a very difficult balance to achieve. So, I mean, I don't think, you know, I mean, I can't say anything about anybody else, just that it's very difficult. So it goes back to that listening to yourself and your body, and that if you feel that something's going on and you're not getting the answers you need, whether it's from somebody's online quiz to your own doctor, then you need to keep searching and keep, you know, looking and get another doctor and get real lab tests. I mean, it was like me standing there with a pretty good doctor. Yeah, it was like me standing there with my doctor and her telling me it was just stress, and I said, no, it's not. You know, that's the take-home point of all of this, that you need to listen to you more than you need to listen to anybody else's quiz or any lab test. If you don't feel right and you know something's wrong and your lab tests are not coming back that something's wrong, keep at it. Trust yourself that something's not right and keep going.
Okay, thank you.
You're so welcome. Best of luck to you.
And we are coming to an end. Naman, is there a lot of questions left? Because it's 8 o'clock.
There are 3 questions in queue right now. I don't know if
I'm happy to answer the 3 if y'all have time. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Meyer.
All right. Second. Hi, go ahead.
Hi, Dr. Meyer. I'm a and there's no shortage of stress in my life, and I know that's a major trigger for Hashimoto's. So short of having to change careers, what are some ways you might suggest on how to reduce stress? I've heard things like acupuncture, but I've never tried it. I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, for sure. Could you cut out in the very beginning? You said you're and then it cut out?
I'm a pastor, and there's no
pastor. Yeah. So you're a caregiver and not getting the care you need. So you need you need some of your own caregiving. So my thyroid connection, so my first book, The Autoimmune Solution, I sort of put the stress chapter in with the infections chapter, and then I went through some really stressful events myself while writing the thyroid connection. So in the thyroid connection, I have a whole chapter just on stress, and I actually added it into the daily plan of into the daily plan. So I definitely recommend you pick up a copy of it because I really walk through things that are free and that you can do, daily, like prayer, meditation, deep breathing, to things that you could do on a weekly basis, like acupuncture, float tanks. I mean, all kinds of things that I tried and try to do to things maybe doing on a monthly basis, like neurofeedback. And I go into detail about each one of those things and their benefits. So, yes, I mean, again, it's one of those things that you need to find what works for you. I love acupuncture. It's one of the few things that they put those needles in, and like a horse that got tranquilized. Going to yoga didn't really work for me, but it might be wonders for somebody else. So it's I think the take-home point is you're the caregiver for so many people that many of us in a healing profession often are there for everybody else, but we're not there for ourselves. So whether that's finding your own pastor or somebody that you can talk with, if that's something that's helpful to you, or whether you don't want to talk to somebody because all you're doing is talking to people all day and you want to go somewhere like a float tank and be in total isolation and sensory deprivation and have complete and utter silence. Those are all things that you'll have to try to figure out what you need. But my book really has an entire chapter full of, everything that I tried, from heart rate variability to apps on my phone to Muse, which is a gadget you can buy on Amazon for independent neurofeedback, to real neurofeedback, to acupuncture, to float tanks. So it's all in there.
Okay. Well, I'll get the book. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And you take care.
All right.
Thank you for your question. And next person in line. Hi, go ahead.
Hi, Dr. Myers. I wonder if you could comment on the presence of gluten in thyroid medicine. I know there can be a problem with molecular mimicry and the thyroid. I take Tyrosine, but wonder if there's other gluten-free meds.
Oh, so is the question about gluten-free meds?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay, yeah. So it's great to hear there's so many men on this call. Well, not really. Sorry that there's so many men with thyroid dysfunction, but
I'd rather not be on the call.
Yeah, I know. But, good for you guys. Usually it's all, women, so it's great there's some men here. So as far as I am aware, in my research for my book, is that all of the medications are gluten-free. So you are correct that there is we all need, those of us with thyroid dysfunction need to be aware of gluten because of molecular mimicry, that gluten can look very much like our thyroid tissue. So there is corn in some and potato, but in my research there was no gluten in any of the medications or supplemental thyroid hormone. Now, the time that I wrote my book, Armour had just been bought by another company, and there was some speculation they were reformulating it, and they couldn't 100% say that it was gluten-free just because of their source for some sort of starch. But other than that, I was not aware, and we called all the companies, of any gluten in any of the medications.
Sounds like it's a little bit of a moving target. Do they have to inform the public when they make a change with fillers?
I don't think that they do need to inform the public, and often those fillers are things like starch, things that can be hidden names. So you really do need to pick up the phone and call, and then, again, you don't know where they're getting it from, so we a little bit have to trust them. So what I would say is, ways to know are if you suddenly feel different, if your antibodies have suddenly gone up, if you're not seeing improvement. And then, hope that, of course I say no gluten is acceptable. But, you may be somebody that, you have to figure the amount of starch in that pill and then the amount of gluten within that starch of whatever source they're using it from, is hopefully just so minimal. I mean, this is where you do want to be prudent and you want to investigate and do things, but you also don't want to make yourself crazy.
Okay. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Hi, Dr. Myers. This is Naman. I actually have a question for you. I'm curious to get your thoughts on your view on genetic SNPs, specifically as it relates to MTHFR, methylation, and how you've seen them correspond to thyroid issues in your practice.
Yeah, so I actually, on my Thyroid Connection Summit that somebody had referenced, where I interviewed 40 different experts on thyroid, I interviewed Ben Lynch, and he wasn't in, he's mthfr.net, but not, he wasn't aware of any SNPs directly related to the thyroid. In terms of methylation, again, I think that's not necessarily one of those one-to-one correlations, but a secondary correlation where people like myself have 2 mutations at MTHFR, so I don't get rid of heavy metals well. So I was, predisposed to heavy metal overload, and then we know that mercury can have an effect on the thyroid. So I think it's probably more of a secondary, where with these SNPs, somebody like me, again, with COMT, can't really get rid of catecholamines well, so I'm a type A and have high stress levels, so then we might have adrenal fatigue that then leads to thyroid dysfunction. Or MTHFR, again, where you don't get rid of heavy metals, and the heavy metals leads to thyroid dysfunction. Or GSTM1 negative, where you don't recycle your glutathione or make it, and then toxins build up, and then that leads to thyroid dysfunction. So I think it's more that it's with these SNPs, other things, particularly mostly detoxification or inability to detoxify happens, and then that inability to detoxify leads to the thyroid dysfunction or other autoimmune disorders.
Got it. That makes a lot more sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have one more question. Do you have time for answer that?
No problem. Mm-hmm.
All right. 1 second. Hi, go ahead.
Hi, Dr. Myers. I am a Hashimoto's patient, and I actually just yesterday asked my doctor to switch me over from levothyroxine to WP.
Uh-huh.
And I was wondering, will there be, because might I also add, my doctor had never heard of this medication, didn't even know where to get it. So I was kind of being the teacher as far as where I could get the medication, things like that. So I guess my question is, when I make this switch, will I, is there a possibility I will have a different, I don't know, will I feel different? Will I, is there a possibility it can bring more anxiety or some anxiety, or do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, so first of all, I would get a copy of my book and I would give it to your doctor because, first of all, lucky you, they sound receptive and open. And, you might be doing a lot of other people a favor. I've had a lot of feedback. People have brought my book to their doctors, and they were shocked at how well it was received. And I don't know, again, if that's just because, people are now open, they're having more patients ask questions, or, the fact that I am an MD and maybe they feel more receptive to having been given a book, by another MD. But, lucky you that you have somebody that's willing to experiment outside their known toolbox. And they, again, you just might be opening the door to many, many other people by giving them a book or, alerting them to the book, and so they can learn more. So anytime you change hormone, whether it's from just T4 to another form of T4 or T4 to a combo T4, T3, these are hormones. They have an enormous impact on your life. They regulate your entire metabolism. So anytime you make a change, things could not go well, or they could go amazingly well. So I always warn my patients, we're all individuals, hoping that you're going to feel amazing on this, but you might not. You might not like it. There are people who do just fine on Synthroid and do better on Synthroid. Not a lot, but they are out there. So hopefully, unlike the previous caller, if you were here from the beginning of the call, who got switched from T4 to a T4, T3 combo, and the conversion was not, was under-converted for her, whether that was the doctor's mistake or her body just, needed a different dose and didn't fit into a standardized sheet of paper that tells us what that conversion is, things can not go great, or they can go great, or they can go too great to where you're hyper, where you got too much T3. So, in general, if you're doing well on what you're on, your doctor looks at the conversion table. For most people, that does go generally pretty well, and getting some T3 in your system will be hopefully a good thing for you, and a light bulb will go on, and you'll feel great and feel amazing, and you'll be thankful that he or she did that for you. But anytime you're adding in T3, it's a quick-acting hormone, and it could be too much for you, and your adrenals might not be ready for it. But I would say for the vast majority of people working with me, and I'm not touting my horn, but I can only speak to me, being a thyroid patient, so I understand the thyroid better than most doctors out there, because I too take this and have been on my own roller coaster. So I feel like I understand this better than the average doctor out there. And then having worked with so many people with thyroid, I feel like I'm pretty good at, switching somebody from one to the other. And 9 times out of 10, that goes really well for people. But at the end of the day, everybody's an individual, and you always have to let people know. I have a patient that I was seeing recently. He was actually a very famous person, and she was just on Synthroid, and she was actually doing fine on Synthroid. And I'm like, she's in the midst of filming a TV show and everything, and I'm like, look, we can convert you to this other and just see if you could be doing even more amazing, or maybe you don't want to do that because you're doing pretty good, pretty amazing, and you're like height of filming this show right now. So maybe we don't want to mess with the good thing, because, even a good thing getting messed with could turn into a bad thing. So you always need to know that any kind of hormone, that there's that chance. But for most people, that conversion goes well, and most people don't need to worry about anything. If anything, they feel great because they got some T3 in their system.
So whenever you say that someone can possibly feel that they will feel good, I guess because I've never, since I was diagnosed, I've not felt good. So I don't know what I'm supposed to feel like anymore. So is that like, I don't know, I guess what is the definition of feel good?
Well, I think
that's for energy, or
I think that's unique to everybody, and we don't have time to get into all the ways that you don't feel good. But I would say that for most people, when they get T3, again, this is most people, the light bulb goes on, their brain seems to fire more effectively, more efficiently, quicker. They have more energy. They have more vitality. They might have a better sex drive. Their skin might improve. They have a glow. They have, just a brightness to them. So their hair stops falling out. They don't feel quite as cold. I mean, it really depends on, and if I just listed a bunch of symptoms that you have, I definitely would try the T3, and I would, pick up a copy of the book and do the program in the book, because I heard of, like maybe there were a lot
already
of
doing it
on that list, okay, that you, needed some help with. Yeah. so I would give it a whirl, see how it goes, and just be really thankful that you found a doctor that's open-minded, and like I said, don't feel shy to give them a copy of the book or recommend the book, because it's gotten a lot of feedback that doctors have been really receptive, and you might be doing a whole lot of good to hundreds if not thousands of other patients that this person sees.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Fabian, I think we can turn it back to you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Myers, for your time. We so appreciate
You're so welcome.
We
Absolutely.
love you. And on behalf of Hashimoto's Awareness Organization, I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. HA is a nonprofit organization that relies entirely on donations from supporters like you. So if you would like to support our mission, please visit our website at hashimotosawareness.org. And have a wonderful, happy holidays, everyone, and a safe and healthy new year. And we will speak again in January.
Thanks so much, everybody. And if you don't already know, my website's amymyersmd.com if you're looking for just more information. And I hope everybody has a happy holidays and a wonderful new year filled with health and happiness.
Thank you so much. Same to you, Dr. Myers.
Thank
you. Take care. Bye-bye.
We'll speak soon.